What's up guys, Elfis here, and today we're going to be doing another Han hero review. This time we're reviewing Lord Salforis, and I'm kind of going to talk about how he fits in the current metagame, and after taking in some constructive criticism, I'm going to talk about his skills a bit too. Although I'm going to try and stick away from guide kind of information and balance information. It's going to be more so whether I think the skills are strong or not whether or not what changes I think. Well, we'll see what we get to. I'm not entirely sure what I want to do. Okay, so let's jump into this. So first of all, is the hero any good? The hero's fantastic, actually. I think the hero fits incredibly well at the moment. He's incredibly tanky, but he's not just incredibly tanky. He's incredibly tanky with the added bonus of dealing a decent amount of damage. Now he has a. Let's talk about his skills since we're getting into how you know his damage is. He deals a moderate amount of damage. It's not a Pebbles amount of damage or anything along that lines, but it is certainly an amount that would cause fear in certain squishier heroes. Okay, so let's just talk about his skills briefly. Okay, he has a kind of a passive pseudo mock built in, which is a fantastic ability to have. He has kind of a passive. Well, the pseudo mock also has a passive amount of regen built in there too, and then on top of that, he has kind of a pseudo nuke, so to speak. It nukes and then heals him back a bit, so I kind of call it a pseudo nuke. And he has a pseudo mock because the mock doesn't exactly work like a mock. It distributes the 50 damage evenly among the people that are in the area, as well as creeps. So it doesn't deal 50 to everybody. It's just going to deal. And actually, I think Mach is 40. So, but here I'll just highlight the skill, and you guys can read while I'm doing it. So it deals 50 true damage, which is a nice added bonus as opposed to just magic damage or something. And the damage is split between the enemies, at a maximum of 10 damage per second, or sorry, a minimum of 10 damage per second. So if there's only one person around you, it does 50. If there's 10 people around you, whatever, it'll do 10 damage. If there's 100 people around you, it'll do 10 damage, whatever. If there's 4 people around you, it'll do 12.5 damage each. So that's a little math for you guys. So that skill's actually fantastic, by the way. It's what gives him a lane presence, and on top of that, it gives him passive health regen. So if you read it, it steals half of nearby enemies' health regen, giving it to himself. So it gives you passive health regen. It gives you the ability to deal passive damage to not only enemy creeps but also enemy heroes. So it gives you kind of a bit of a lane presence there against other melee heroes. And that's kind of what allows him to solo mid against other heroes. You're leveling this skill first. You got basically a built-in mock by level 7. So it's what people would classify as his ability to solo mid. That and his W is incredibly strong. So while we're at it, let's move on to his W. His W, I'm sure you've all been beaten to crap by this. Incredibly short cooldown at level 4. Very low mana cost considering his mana pool. It gives you a 40% move slow for 2 seconds. It gives Salforis 50 move speed, and adding 120 damage to his next ability. And at level 4, it gives you 100% life leech. All the damage that you just did is leached back to you. Obviously, at lower levels, you can see that it doesn't give you 100%, and it gives you less damage and blah blah blah. But so we're going to be referring to things as max level. Okay, so this skill is fantastic. It gives Salforis a massive amount of regen. Sorry about that. A massive amount of regen, as well as a fairly significant damage bonus every 5 seconds. And on top of the fact that it gives him a 40% movement slow every 5 seconds that lingers for 2 seconds. So really, you only don't have the movement slow for 3 seconds. Okay. Assuming you're keeping up with the person and getting him every 5 seconds on the dot, which obviously not everybody does, but that's okay. I'm just going to assume best case scenario. So that skill is fantastic. It is fantastic. Okay, it is one of the best skills in the game in my opinion. It is fantastic, and I think it may even be overpowered. Although I'm not going to get into why. It's just so incredibly strong. His Q very much so lingers off a bit though. So it does give them reduced healing, which is fantastic against enemy teams that have healing, but as well as just regen and stuff like that. But it's not a particularly strong ability for the sense that it does 360 damage, okay, but it costs 120 mana. The range is only 500 with a 225 radius, which isn't very big. I think that's even smaller than Pyromancer Crater, if I'm not mistaken. I don't actually know the name of the skill. I don't know if it's Crater or what, so I couldn't tell you guys. But you guys know what I'm talking about, that like meteor that that Pyromancer does, the crater. I can't tell you. So I think it's actually smaller. I think Pyromancer's crater is probably like a 300 radius, something along those lines, and it may be like a 600 range. I'm not sure. It might be about the same range, but it's not a particularly strong skill. It doesn't slow. It doesn't stun. It doesn't have any crowd control, which is where it lacks. It's decent damage, I guess, but considering they get 20% of it back, it's really best used as like a killing maneuver, kind of like a Legionnaire ultimate, so to speak. So that way they don't get the damage back. You can get the full effect of the ability. But that's kind of like the way you should use it. Then his ultimate, we've all been killed by a Salforis ultimate. It's a pretty strong ability. It gives it makes them take superior magic damage. You can't regenerate health. You can't heal. You can't do anything. The thing you can do is you can go invulnerable if you're certain heroes that have invulnerability. You can do that. So I'll give you an example. Dr. Pulsar can jump around, and his ultimate will make him immortal, so to speak. I believe you can put I can't think of it, a Cyclone Stick. You can Cyclone Stick yourself, and it should make you not take the damage. I haven't tested that, but that would be my assumption, since that's what Cyclone Stick does. Or sorry, not Cyclone Stick, I keep using that. Storm Spirit, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. So that ability is quite strong in itself. Now, we've talked about his abilities and whether I think they're weak or strong, etc. Let's talk about how he's kind of fitting in. So Salforis is very tanky, very, very tanky, and that's where he kind of shines. With the passive regen from his E as well as the heals from his W, he is very tanky. He actually used to be slightly more tanky. They nerfed his ultimate. He used to be able to use it to heal or gain stats, stuff like that. Now he can no longer do that. So he was kind of gimped in that sense. Fade here is about to get caught out because she goes back to the room. Unfortunately, she gets away, though. She's lucky I was a little slow on my uptake there, because she certainly should have been caught. And if Valkyrie had landed the arrow a little bit better, it would have been better. But, so anyways, so how does he fit in? He's incredibly tanky, which is fantastic for the way that you play the hero. You just run in, you beat the crap out of people with your W, get someone who's somewhat low with your R. Usually you want them to take the full duration, so that way you get the most use out of it. But even if they don't, it's really not that big of a deal. It's usually used for people who are getting away, because if they're getting away, this is a guaranteed, basically guaranteed dot damage that they can't heal. They really, there's only a few heroes that can mitigate it, or a few items that can mitigate it anyways, or not mitigate. Mitigate would mean like decrease it. That can avoid it, basically, so to speak. So that's just the way the ability is. The hero's played and the ability kind of works. So then, how does he fit in compared to other tanks? Well, what a good tank needs, and keep in mind, people, tank is not an actual required role to fill in games. I just want to briefly mention that a lot of people think it is, and it's really not. Usually, initiator is a role that you need. You don't necessarily need someone to tank damage, though. But he's kind of like a tank. He doesn't really initiate all too well because he doesn't have any stuns. He doesn't have any massive, AoE nukes or things like that. He doesn't have any. He usually you probably wouldn't be building PK on him because he has no stuns. Usually initiators have lots of stuns or a big AoE stun or something along those lines. So he's a fairly decent tank. He's a fairly decent, I think in League of Legends they call them like bruisers or something like that. He's a tanky hero that goes in and kind of forces the squishy heroes to back off, really, is what he does. So he doesn't really initiate, but he's a really good zoning hero. And so the way that kind of works in comparison to others, what you need to be a good zoning hero, you need to be fairly tanky, the ability to tank damage. You need to have a significant amount of crowd control, but it doesn't need to be hard CC. It can be soft CC, like his slow, and that's just used so that the enemy hard carries, they can't just walk up and beat on your squishy heroes. The other thing that you need is a decent chunk of damage dealt. If you can deal a decent chunk of damage, you can zone them out. If you don't deal damage, even if you have crowd control, you're not going to scare them away or anything like that. They're just going to keep coming. So you kind of need to be able to dish out a decent chunk of damage. And Salforis does that significantly with his W, as well as his E is pretty strong when it comes to the damage too. I just want you guys to take a quick look at the range on his E. It's not very big. So that means if you're right next to somebody, keep in mind, there's two heroes, you're trying to zone out, and the other three they're in the team fight, but they're not right next to you like that. They're not going to be splitting the damage evenly. It's going to be going on those two heroes. It's a fairly short range, which is good and bad. It makes it so that, you know, the damage isn't split so easily, because that's how the ability works. But then on top of that, it's not that fantastic like a Mach is. So pros and cons, I guess. But so to fill that role, you need to be tanky, you need to deal a fair amount of damage, and having some decent CC is usually a plus too. So Salforis has those three things. The one thing he's missing, or not really missing, more so just lacking a bit, is kind of in the crowd control area and in the damage area. So he's incredibly tanky, one of the tankiest, you know, tanks in the game, so to speak, between his W and E. The one, I think, the unarguably most tanky hero in the game is probably Armadon. I think everybody would kind of agree to that, because he gets, I believe, from the back it's 20%, and from the sides it's 15 or 10%, if I'm not mistaken. Just flat-out damage mitigation is what the skill says. So that means physical and magical damage is mitigated. So if you turn around, you're immediately taking 20% less damage. That is an enormous amount of mitigation just for turning around, you know? So, but enough about Armadon, because that's not what this review's about. So what's he lacking in the crowd control and the damage area? So first of all, in the damage area, his nuke is mediocre. It's okay. It's not terrible. It doesn't have any crowd control in it, so that's where it kind of lacks a bit. And in his W, which I refer to his nuke as the Q, by the way. In his W, it's actually a fantastic skill. The only fix I would do to it is maybe... Actually, you know what? There really isn't anything you could do to that, because it's already so strong. You'd have to just rework the skill. So in the W, in his Q, though, you could add a slow, perhaps, and that would make the skill much better. Maybe like a 20% movement speed slow over 3 seconds, 2 seconds, something like that, and that would make the skill a lot better. So he's lacking a bit in the crowd control in his Q area, and his damage is actually not fantastic. When you blow your whole load, Alt, Q, and W on somebody, it does a decent amount, but usually, you know, you want to use the Q on area, you know, on more than one hero, and then, you know, the W or the R, your ultimate, you kind of save for people who are trying to escape. You don't want to just run in and blow it. Usually you can. It's not bad. It's just, typically it's a good ability to get someone who's going to try to escape. So that's usually what you want to save it for. But other than that, he fills his role quite good. Only thing is that his role isn't necessarily needed in the current metagame. Usually you want to have initiators, carries, and, you know, maybe some type of nuke or AoE damage kind of dealers, supports, stuff like that. Salforis doesn't really fill any of those roles. He's just kind of there. He fills a role. I'm not saying the hero doesn't fill a role. I'm saying he doesn't fill a necessary role, which is why I don't think he's played very much in competitive play, and actually why I don't think he's played very much in higher tier play. I play at the 1700 level, and you don't see him as much, although even 1700s you still see him. If you get up to the 19s or so, you probably see him a lot less. So he's just one of those heroes that he's a strong hero. He just he's not needed in the way the game's played at the moment. You know, you need initiators, and he kind of takes a hero, one of your 5 hero selections, and doesn't fill a role that you need. So it's not necessarily a good pickup, so to speak, even though he's a good hero. So in the end, I like the hero. The hero's fun to play, but he is not a hero that's really needed if you're playing at a competitive level and you're really playing, you know, to win, you know, the game. What I do think, though, is that the hero is still fairly strong. So if, you know, the metagame changes to a certain extent, he will be a very viable hero. So my overall rating, I'm going to give him a 3 stars out of 5 because he's a strong hero. He's just not needed at the moment. So no matter how strong the hero is, if you're just not needed, then you're just not needed. He doesn't fit in the game at the moment. So as unfortunate as it is, he's a strong hero. Just in the game, he's just not useful. So if the metagame changes, he could go up to a 5-star. He's a very strong, well, maybe like a 4.5-star, 4-star, because he does have some flaws, as I mentioned, but they're minor flaws. He's still a strong hero. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, requests, if I'm taking requests for the next heroes to do, please let me know in the comments section. Inbox me, message me in game, whatever you guys want to do. It's all good. Once again, thank you for watching. And if you have any comments on my rating, you're more than welcome to give them. I'd be more than happy to hear them. I do think it's an accurate rating considering he's just not as useful in the metagame. He's a strong hero, just in the metagame he doesn't fit in. So, thank you guys for watching once again, and I will talk to you guys later. GG, well played, guys. Elfis out.